Your daughter-in-law is selling your son's tools out of his own garage, and the man helping her load them isn't your son. That's what my neighbor Bert told me on a Tuesday morning, standing in my driveway with his hands shoved deep in his pockets and his eyes full of something that looked a lot like pity. I didn't believe him. Not because Bert was a liar, but because believing him meant everything my son had built was a fraud. My son was married to a woman who could smile at you so warmly you'd swear she meant it. She had fooled him completely. What she didn't count on was that an old man with nothing but time and a broken heart would become the one person she couldn't outsmart. But before I tell you what I did, drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from today. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now, because what happened next is something every parent needs to hear. My name is Jasper and I'm 68 years old. I spent 31 years as a fitter at the American plant outside of Decatur, Illinois. Retired 6 years ago with a pension, a paid-off house, and one son who I thought had everything figured out. Ethan. He was the kind of man who made you proud without trying. Mechanical engineer, quiet, dependable, the type who'd fix your furnace on a Saturday and refuse to take $1 for it. He married Monica 4 years ago, and I'll be honest, I wanted to like her. She was polished, confident, always dressed like she was headed somewhere important. But there was something behind her eyes that never quite reached her smile, like she was performing warmth instead of feeling it. I told myself I was being an old fool. Ethan loved her, and that was supposed to be enough. Every other Sunday I'd drive the 40 minutes to their place in Springfield for dinner. It was my anchor. After my wife Bea passed, those dinners were the only thing on my calendar that mattered. I'd bring a 6-pack of the craft beer Ethan liked, and Monica would set out a nice meal, and for a couple hours I could pretend my family was whole. But that particular Tuesday changed everything. Bert lived 3 houses down from Ethan, retired electrician. We'd known each other from union picnics for years. He wasn't the gossiping type. So when he drove all the way out to my place in Decatur unannounced, I knew it was serious. He told me he'd been walking his dog past Ethan's house around 10 in the morning, a time Ethan was always at work. The garage door was wide open and Monica was inside with a man Bert had never seen. They were loading Ethan's table saw, his drill press, and 2 toolboxes into a white pickup truck. The man had his hand on Monica's waist as they talked. Bert said it didn't look like a business transaction. I thanked him, told him I'd handle it, and watched him drive away. Then I sat in my kitchen for a long time, staring at the coffee ring on the table, feeling the floor tilt under me. Ethan's tools. He'd collected those over 15 years. Some of them were gifts from me. That table saw, I'd given him that for his 30th birthday. And she was selling them out of his garage while he was at work, with another man standing right there in his house. But I couldn't just call Ethan and tell him. I'd learned that lesson the hard way with a buddy of mine years ago. You tell a man in love that his wife is no good, and he doesn't hear a warning, he hears an attack. I needed proof so solid that even love couldn't argue with it. The following Sunday I drove to Springfield for dinner as usual. I brought the beer. I smiled. I sat at their table and watched Monica like a hawk, though I made sure she didn't notice. The house looked the same, but now I was cataloging things differently. The new leather handbag on the hallway hook, the designer sunglasses on the counter, a receipt from a boutique in Chicago, peeking out from under a magazine. Everything suddenly looked like evidence. Ethan came home late, still in his work boots, dark circles under his eyes. He'd been pulling overtime for months, double shifts some weeks. He hugged me and said he was sorry for being tired, and I had to look away because the anger in my chest was so hot I was afraid it would leak out of my eyes. During dinner, Monica brought up her mother. She did this every visit, like clockwork. My mom's assisted living facility is raising their rates again, she sighed, pushing her food around her plate. They want to add a physical therapy program, but it's another $400 a month. I just don't know how we'll manage. Ethan reached over and squeezed her hand. We'll figure it out, babe. Your mom deserves the best. I watched that little performance and felt my stomach turn, because I knew something Monica didn't know I knew. I knew where her mother actually was. A few days later, I drove to Meadowbrook Gardens, the assisted living facility in Peoria where Monica said her mother Hazel was staying. I'd heard Monica mention the name once, months ago, and I'd written it down on a scrap of paper that had been sitting in my wallet ever since. The building was a low, beige structure set back from a busy road. The kind of place that looks acceptable from the outside but tells a different story once you walk through the doors. The carpet was stained. The hallway lights flickered. A television in the common room was playing to an audience of empty chairs. I found the front desk and told the woman I was family. She barely looked up. She told me Hazel was in room 14, down the hall and to the left. I asked as casually as I could manage whether the family had set up any supplemental care plan or made additional payments beyond the standard rate. She checked the computer. "No, sir," she said. "Mrs. Hazel Endicott is on the basic Medicaid plan. No supplemental payments on file. No private pay upgrades. No additional services requested." She looked at me like she was waiting for me to leave. I walked down that hallway feeling like I was carrying a cinder block in each hand. Room 14 was small and dim. Hazel was sitting in a vinyl recliner by the window which overlooked the parking lot. She was a tiny woman, maybe 90 pounds, with papriskifn hands that trembled when she lifted them. She was wearing a sweater that was too thin for the air conditioning blasting from the vent above her bed. On the nightstand was a small framed photo of Monica as a child, gap-toothed and grinning. It was the only personal item in the room. When she saw me, her face opened up like a flower turning toward the sun. She didn't get many visitors. I introduced myself, Ethan's father. She clasped my hand with both of hers and wouldn't let go for a full minute. We talked. She told me about the food which was bland, about the aide who sometimes forgot to bring her evening medication on time, about the television in the common room that was always too loud. She spoke about Monica with a desperate kind of loyalty that made my throat ache. "My daughter is so busy, you know. She works so hard. She calls when she can." Then Hazel leaned forward, her eyes bright with something that looked like a child's anticipation. She lowered her voice. "Monica promised me something special," she whispered. "For my birthday last month. She said she was going to bring me a pair of warm slippers, the kind with the sheepskin lining, because my feet get so cold on this tile floor at night. I've been waiting." She smiled, embarrassed. "I know it's silly to be excited about slippers, but my old ones fell apart months ago, and walking to the bathroom at night on that cold floor, well." She trailed off, looking down at her bare feet on the tile. I couldn't speak. I just sat there, looking at this woman's bare feet on a cold floor, in a room that hadn't seen a dollar of the money my son was bleeding himself dry to provide. The slippers. That was the thing that broke me. Not the toolboxes, not the designer bags, not the man in the garage. It was a pair of slippers that cost maybe $30 and never arrived. I told Hazel the slippers were on their way. I told her I'd make sure of it. Then I walked out to my car, sat behind the wheel and gripped it until my knuckles turned white. I didn't cry, I was past crying. What I felt was something older and colder than grief. It was the absolute certainty that I was going to end this, no matter what it cost me. The next morning I drove back to Springfield, not to Ethan's house, to the neighborhood. I parked on a side street 2 blocks away, where I could see their driveway through a gap in the hedges. Monica's car was there, Ethan's was gone. He was at work as always. At 10:15, a white pickup truck pulled into the driveway. Same truck Bert described. A man got out. Tall, athletic build, expensive-looking jacket. He walked to the front door and let himself in with a key. He had a key to my son's house. I felt something twist inside me, not surprise. I was past that. Just a cold, mechanical focus. I sat and waited. At 11:40, they came out together. Monica had changed clothes, was wearing a silk blouse and heels that were entirely wrong for a Tuesday morning in Springfield. The man opened the passenger door of the truck for her. She laughed at something he said, touching his arm in a way that was unmistakable. They drove off. I followed them at a safe distance. They went to Westfield Mall on the south side of town. I parked several rows away and followed them inside. They walked arm in arm through the corridors, stopping at a jewelry counter where Monica tried on a tennis bracelet. The man pulled out a credit card without blinking. Then they sat at a cafe, their heads close together, his hand covering hers on the table. I took 3 photographs from behind a pillar near the food court. Clear shots. Her face, his face, the bracelet, the body language that left nothing to interpretation. I drove home with the photographs on my phone and a plan forming in my mind like a blueprint being drawn one precise line at a time. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table, the same table where Bea and I had eaten 10,000 meals, and I worked through every possibility. Calling Ethan was no good, he'd defend her. I'd become the enemy just like last time I'd hinted something was off and he'd gone quiet on me for 2 weeks. No, I needed Ethan to see it with his own eyes, in a setting where Monica couldn't spin it, couldn't cry her way out, couldn't turn my son against me again. I picked up the phone the next morning and called Ethan. I put a slight tremor in my voice, the kind an old man might have when he's worried about practical matters. "Son," I said, "I've been meaning to talk to you about something important. I've been going through some paperwork, estate stuff, and my lawyer says I need to update the beneficiary documents. He wants both you and Monica to sign a couple of forms. Just a formality, but he says it's got to be done in person." Ethan sounded relieved. "Sure, Dad. That's no problem. When do you want us to come by?" "Saturday? I'll check with Monica." I could hear it in the background. the faint, sharp murmur of Monica's voice asking what was going on. I could practically hear her ears perk up at the word estate. 10 seconds later, Ethan was back. "Saturday works, we'll be there at noon." I hung up and went to work. I printed the photographs, I put them in a plain manila envelope. I drove to a Walmart in Peoria and bought a pair of sheepskin-lined slippers, size 6, and set them on my kitchen table next to the envelope. Then I cleaned the house, set out coffee cups and waited. They arrived right on time. Monica walked in first, wearing a cashmere sweater and pearl earrings, smiling that practiced smile. She hugged me briefly, the way you hug someone you're obligated to be polite to. Ethan followed, looking tired but glad to see me. He squeezed my shoulder. I led them to the living room. On the coffee table I had placed a folder labeled Estate Documents. Monica's eyes went to it immediately and stayed there. "Sit down," I said. "Before we get to the paperwork, there's something I need to share with both of you." Monica settled into the armchair, crossing her legs, her posture relaxed but her eyes alert. Ethan leaned against the doorframe. I looked at my son. "Ethan," I said, "you know I love you more than anything in this world. Everything I've ever done has been to protect you. I need you to remember that in the next few minutes."
"Dad, what's going on?"
His voice was cautious. I opened the envelope and placed the 3 photographs face up on the coffee table. One by one, the jewelry counter, the cafe, the hand-holding, each image sharp and undeniable. The room went silent. The clock on the wall ticked. I watched Monica's face go through 3 stages in 2 seconds. Confusion, recognition, and then a flash of something feral and dangerous before she locked it down behind a mask of outrage. Ethan stepped forward and picked up the first photo. His hand was steady, but I could see the muscles in his jaw working. "Who is this?" he asked, his voice very quiet. "That is the man who has been coming to your house while you're at work," I said. "He lets himself in with a key. They go shopping together afterward, usually at Westfield Mall. Those photos were taken last Tuesday. Your neighbor Bert saw them loading your tools into his truck 2 weeks ago. Your table saw your drill press." Ethan stared at the photographs. He didn't look at Monica. Not yet. Monica stood up. Her voice came out hard and fast. "This is insane. You followed me? You're a crazy old man who has always hated me, and now you're making up stories and stalking me to turn my husband against me. Ethan, look at me. This is your father trying to destroy our marriage." Ethan still didn't look at her. He was staring at the second photograph, the one from the cafe, the man's hand covering Monica's. I kept my voice steady. "There's more," I said. "I drove to Meadowbrook Gardens last week, your mother's facility in Peoria." Monica's head snapped toward me, her composure cracked. "Just for a second. Don't you dare," she whispered. I kept going. I spoke to the front desk. "There have been no supplemental payments, no physical therapy program. Your mother is on basic Medicaid. She has been the entire time." Ethan finally looked at his wife. His voice was barely a whisper. "You told me we were paying an extra $800 a month. You told me it went up again last quarter." I reached behind my chair and placed the box of slippers on the table next to the photographs. "Your mother asked me about these," I said to Monica. "She told me you promised her sheepskin slippers for her birthday because her feet get cold on the tile floor at night. Her old ones fell apart. She's been waiting." I watched Monica's face as I said it. "She's been walking to the bathroom barefoot on cold tile, waiting for a $30 pair of slippers from a daughter who was too busy buying tennis bracelets to remember." Something changed in the room then. It was like the air got heavier. Ethan set the photograph down. He looked at Monica, and I watched 3 years of love and trust leave his eyes in real time. It was the worst thing I've ever seen, and I'm the one who caused it. Monica must have sensed that the game was over because something shifted in her face too. The mask didn't just slip, she ripped it off. She looked at Ethan with a contempt so raw it made my blood go cold. "You want the truth? Fine. Yes, I took the money. Every cent. You made it so easy. You were so desperate to be the good husband, the good provider. You never once questioned where it went. You just kept working and working like a machine, and I let you. Because that's what you are, Ethan. You're a machine. You're boring. You come home smelling like grease and you fall asleep on the couch by 9 o'clock. Tyler has ambition. Tyler has a life. You have a pension plan and a father who can't mind his own business." Every word landed on my son like a hammer blow. I watched his shoulders curve inward, watched his hands ball into fists at his sides. But he didn't shout, he didn't move, he just stood there, absorbing it, and I realized in that moment that my son was stronger than I'd given him credit for. "Get out of my fuzz house," Ethan said. His voice was quiet and final. There was no anger in it, just a door closing. Monica grabbed her purse, knocked the box of slippers off the table with her elbow as she passed, and walked out. The front door slammed so hard the photographs fluttered on the coffee table. Through the window, I watched her pull out her phone before she even reached the driveway. Calling Tyler, I assumed. Ethan didn't move for a long time. He stood in the middle of my living room with his back to me, his shoulders rising and falling with slow, controlled breaths. Then he sat down on the couch, put his head in his hands and said, "How long, Dad?" I told him everything. Bert's visit, the nursing home, the photographs, the tools. I didn't spare him anything, because he deserved the full truth, even though every word of it was a wound. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he nodded once slowly, like a man accepting a diagnosis. He stayed with me that night. Slept in his old room, the one with the model airplanes still hanging from the ceiling on fishing line. I heard him pacing at 3 a.m., the floorboards creaking in a pattern I remembered from when he was 17 and worried about college applications. Some sounds a father never forgets. The divorce was fast. Monica didn't contest it. With the photographs and the financial records, her lawyer apparently told her she'd lose more by fighting than by walking away. She took whatever was in their joint checking account and the jewelry and disappeared. Ethan later heard through a mutual friend that she and Tyler had moved to Arizona. He didn't ask for details and I didn't offer any. The harder part was the rebuilding. Ethan moved in with me for 4 months. He was quiet for the first few weeks. Not angry quiet, hollow quiet. The silence of a man reassembling his understanding of the past several years, re-examining every conversation, every "I love you," every claim of financial hardship, and finding the lie underneath each one. It's a particular kind of grief, losing not just a person but the version of reality you shared with them. But he came back, slowly. He started working on the old Chevy truck in my garage, the one that had been sitting on blocks since before Bea died. He'd come in for dinner with grease under his fingernails and something close to peace in his eyes. We watched baseball together, argued about the Cardinals' bullpen, ate too much chili. The ordinary rituals of two men learning to be a family of two. About 3 months after the divorce was finalized, Ethan came into the kitchen one Saturday morning with his car keys in his hand and a look on his face I hadn't seen since he was a boy heading out to right a wrong on the playground. "I think it's time we go see Hazel," he said. We drove to Peoria together. The trunk was full. I'd bought the slippers, a thick quilt, a small radio, a stack of puzzle books, and a framed photograph of Ethan and Hazel taken at his college graduation, the only copy I could find. Ethan had added a fleece robe and a box of those butter cookies she liked, the ones in the blue tin. When we walked into room 14, Hazel looked up from her chair with those watery eyes and saw Ethan, and her face did something that broke me all over again. She smiled with her whole body, this tiny, trembling woman, and reached both hands out to him like he was the answer to a prayer she'd stopped saying out loud. Ethan knelt beside her chair. He took her hands. "I'm sorry it took me so long, Hazel," he said, "but I'm here now, and we're going to make some changes." She didn't ask about Monica, not once. I think she already knew, in the way that mothers always know, even when they refuse to say it. The following week, we moved Hazel to a private room at a facility called Sunrise Ridge, a beautiful place on the east side of Peoria with a garden courtyard and wide windows that let in the afternoon light. Her new room had heated floors. She'd never need slippers again, but she wore them anyway every single day, shuffling down the hall to show the nurses. My son-in-law brought me these. She'd tell anyone who would listen, beaming like she'd been handed the moon. Ethan visits her every Sunday now. Sometimes I ride along. We bring her flowers or books or just ourselves. She calls him her good boy, and I can see the way it heals something in him each time she says it, filling in a space that Monica carved out and left empty. People ask me sometimes if I regret what I did, if I feel guilty for destroying my son's marriage. The answer is no, I didn't destroy it. I just turned the lights on in a room where a crime was being committed in the dark. What I do regret is that it took me so long. I regret every cold night Hazel spent barefoot on that tile floor. I regret every double shift my son worked to fund a lie. Those are the things that keep me up at night, not the truth. The truth was the only mercy any of us received. I used to think a father's job ended when his son became a man. I was wrong. A father's job never ends, it just changes shape. When they're small, you protect them from falling off bikes and touching hot stoves. When they're grown, you protect them from the things they can't see because love has blinded them. And sometimes that means being the bad guy for a while. Sometimes it means your own son won't speak to you for 2 weeks because you asked the wrong question at dinner. But you don't stop. You never stop. Because that's what fathers do. There's a Bible verse Bea used to keep on a note card taped to the refrigerator. "The truth will set you free." I used to read it every morning while I poured my coffee, and I never really thought about what it cost to get to that freedom. Now I know. The truth cost my son a marriage, 3 years of his life, and a kind of innocence you don't get back. But it also gave him something. It gave him clarity and self-respect, and a relationship with a lonely old woman who lights up like Christmas morning every time he walks through her door wearing that sheepskin robe he bought to match her slippers. If you're watching this and something in this story felt familiar, if you've noticed something about someone your child loves and you've been afraid to say it, I want you to hear me clearly. Say it. Find the proof. Be patient, be strategic, but don't stay silent, 'cause silence isn't kindness. Silence is just a slower kind of cruelty. What a story we've shared today. Sometimes the hardest battles aren't fought with fists but with truth. If you found meaning in this, please hit that like button and share it with someone who might need to hear it. I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to protect someone you love from a truth they weren't ready to face? And if you're not yet part of our family here at vx-sweetrevenge, subscribe and tap that bell, because we've got more stories about the courage it takes to stand up for the people who matter most. Thank you for your time and God bless every one of you.